Taiwan's semiconductor stocks plummet after the U.S. unveils sweeping export controls on Chinese chips companies. One of Taiwan's semiconductor industry heavyweights speaks up about the silicon shield.
I'm Liao for TaiwanPlus here at Songshan Airport in the capital Taipei with a report on how Taiwanese travellers are keen to visit Japan after nearly 3 years of COVID-related travel restrictions.
A national park teams up with volunteers and scholars to protect Taiwan's land crabs. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Shares in Taiwan have plunged to their lowest level in 2 years after the U.S. announced sweeping export controls targeting Chinese semiconductor companies. Stocks of the world's most advanced chip manufacturer, Taiwan's TSMC, fell more than 8% in the first day of trading since National Day in Taiwan. Other major Taiwanese chip companies are also down. Chip stocks across Asia fell after U.S. President Joe Biden on Friday announced sweeping export controls on Chinese chip companies aimed at preventing China from becoming self-sufficient in the critical technology. But the broader impact of the restrictions is weighing on the global chip industry. Bloomberg estimates $240 billion has been wiped from chip stocks since Biden's announcement. To find out more about the impact of the U.S. export controls on Taiwan's companies, our reporter James Chater spoke to Brady Wong, an associate director at Counterpoint Research in Taipei.
Explain for us what these new U.S. export controls are and what exactly they will cover.
The constraint on the Chinese semiconductor industries is broad and very deep. The first one is about the process. It asks the U.S. companies or company which use U.S. technologies cannot support the Chinese manufacturing companies to develop the cutting-edge technologies. But now it looks like U.S. try to put YMTC on the UVL and verify the list, which means YMTC need to prove itself not to work with the company in the entity list, or they didn't support the military service. The third one is about the chips, the product. It also restricts the companies outside China to sell the high-end chips to China companies. The last one is about the people. It asks the American citizen cannot support the companies in the entity list or in the UVL, or they cannot support the Chinese company to develop the cutting-edge technologies.
Why have we seen this dramatic drop in Taiwan's chip stocks, given that these export controls are focused on China? And what does that tell us about the impact of these export controls on Taiwan specifically?
It may be a problem in the short term, right? Because of uncertainties, because of the new regulations, because they are used to provide chips to Chinese clients. If the semiconductor industries in China stop or develop slow down, that will be opportunities for the companies outside China, right? So I would regard this as an opportunities for companies outside China. However, as you know, Taiwan is the hub of the semiconductor supply chain, right? I believe Taiwan may benefit more from the long-term perspective.
Broadly speaking, I mean, what do you think the prospects are for those really big like TSMCs of the world? Their prospects are in this new environment of export controls and the US kind of China competition.
Yeah, I think U.S. government learned a lot in the past few years. So now they learn the details of the semiconductor supply chain, right? So they know what is the critical point and how to control the global supply chain. The shortage is because of the constraint from U.S. to China. So I believe in the long run, it will be a good opportunity for Taiwanese vendors. But it really depends on, how if they can grasp these opportunities.
Facing an increasingly aggressive China, some in Taiwan believe that semiconductors, often called the country's silicon shield, can prevent an attack. As Eric Gao reports, one of the biggest names in the industry says he agrees.
This piece of silicon could be the main thing stopping China from invading Taiwan, which it unilaterally claims as part of its territory. Speaking to the U.S. news program 60 Minutes, the founder of the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturer explained how this silicon shield would protect Taiwan from a potential attack.
It means that perhaps because our company provides a lot of chips to the world, maybe somebody will refrain from attacking it. If that person's priority is for economic well-being, I think they will refrain from attacking.
Taiwan produces almost all of the world's most advanced chips, which are used in everything from cars to smartphones to fighter jets. So any attack on Taiwan and its semiconductor industry would affect far more than just the country.
如果两岸真的不幸开战，那对于台湾的台积电，甚至于台湾的晶圆代工产业的话，势必会有极大的影响。我们可以知道，台湾的晶圆代工产业的话，占有全世界的市占率高达65%以上。
Other countries, including China, are trying to lessen their reliance on Taiwan by building up their own semiconductor sectors. But Taiwanese President Tsai says her government will work hard to stay the industry leader.
我们会持续维持台湾在半导体尖端制造的优势和能量，同时也会协助全球在半导体供应链重整上进行最佳的配置，让护国神山的全球地位更形重要。
With Taiwan's current role in the global chips industry, should China break the silicon shield and attack the country, there would be no winners, only losers. Alex Chen and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
After nearly 3 years of pandemic border controls, Japan is reopening to tourists. Rick Glowert went to Taipei's Songshan Airport to find out more.
Before the pandemic, Japan was the top choice for those in Taiwan wanting to go on vacation. In 2019, they made 5 million trips to the country. Now, after nearly 3 years, tourists are once again free to visit. Here at Songshan Airport, the capital's largest, passengers queue for flights to Japan.
对，3年前呢，所以这一次第一波开放，我们就今天就跑了，就这样，就市区观光啊。 然后各家文创店走一走啊，然后看看银杏啊，看看枫叶啊，就是这样。
我很喜欢日本，去日本旅游，对它的环境很好。
去吃拉面啊，然后去那些郊外的景点走一走、晃一晃。
Both Taiwan and Japan had some of the strictest pandemic border restrictions in the world. But with vaccination numbers up and governments shifting to a policy of living with the virus, both countries are now relaxing measures. From Tuesday, Japan reinstates visa-free travel for dozens of eligible countries. Vaccinated visitors will no longer have to do COVID tests or quarantine on arrival. Japan hopes the influx of travellers will help boost a sector that previously made up more than 7% of its GDP. Taiwan this week will also be scrapping more border restrictions. From October the 13th, travellers will no longer have to quarantine. Long after the West dropped COVID-related travel measures, many places in East Asia are finally joining them. Damon Lin and Rick Glowert at Songshan Airport for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's tourism sector is looking to put the pandemic behind it as the country prepares to scrap COVID quarantine and reopen to international tourists. But as John Van Trieste reports, a lack of visitors from China and inflation could make the road to recovery a long one.
Taiwan's tourism sector is planning its comeback. It's been holding promotions abroad, hoping to bring back visitors as Taiwan reopens. But recovery may not be easy, even with the country scrapping its COVID quarantine requirement. One problem is China, Taiwan's biggest source of tourists, where a zero-COVID policy continues to disrupt travel.
大陆跟台湾的这个对会的航班其实也没有几个点所以大陆客减少了以后，你要用其 他国家的这个观光客来把它补到，当然是不可能啦。
This and a cap on weekly arrivals means the industry is only likely to see around 20% of the 11.8 million arrivals it welcomed in 2019. It could be 2024 before a full recovery. And even then, rising prices could hamper growth.
影响最重的应该会在2024，也就是说，当你全面恢复的时候，它就会回到消费者阻碍很重要一个叫成本因素，也就是它的感受体验价值是够的时候，他才会愿意来。
Still, industry insiders are eager to leave the pandemic in the past. They believe more marketing from the government can counteract inflation and convince overseas tourists to begin making their way back to Taiwan. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
New lockdowns have been imposed in China after the country reported an uptick in COVID cases following a week-long public holiday. Restrictions on movement have been imposed in cities in China's northern Shanxi province and Inner Mongolia. The lockdowns come just days before the Chinese Communist Party holds its 20th Party Congress, where President Xi Jinping is set to formalize a norm-breaking third term in office. He has championed China's zero-COVID approach despite the negative impact on economic growth. As Taiwan's National Day festivities drew to a close in the capital, Tsai County in the south hosted this year's roving fireworks display. Reporter Ryan Hill-Kilpatrick was there.
It's a special day here on the spacious grounds of the National Palace Museum's Southern Branch in Chiayi. Taiwan's annual fireworks show to celebrate National Day is held in a different city every year. And this time, after a long separation, it's Chiayi's turn once again.
很自豪，是啊是啊，因为身为在地嘉义县人，对，所以很自豪。欢迎大家都来。
Visitors from around the country descended on the museum's grounds for what felt like the first chance to truly celebrate their country in years.
刚好疫情过一阵子，然后大家就是比较愿意走出来这样子。然后因为我前阵子刚好确诊结束，也算是好不容易出来之后，就是又看到那么多人潮，就也蛮开心的。
Organizers estimate as many as 300,000 people came for the show, including Taiwan's president Tsai. As night fell, crowds filled the surrounding area.
This is the first time Taiwan's National Day fireworks have lit the skies of Chiayi ablaze in nearly 2 decades. And as these crowds show, pouring out of the museum grounds and onto the streets, there's a massive amount of excitement and pride in the air tonight.
Some were there since the early morning to stake out a good spot. And for many, it was well worth the wait.
不错啊，比以往还要精彩啊。对啊，而且时间蛮久的，整个画面都是烟火的那个画面，你应该知道，就是会比较震撼的。
非常棒，台湾真的非常棒。很漂亮，非常震撼，然后很厉害，很开心台湾有这样的表演。
25,000 fireworks lit the night sky for 45 minutes. They were accompanied by 500 drones, forming fighter jets, national treasures, and local delicacies. The whole extravaganza was set to a mix of folk tunes and music by legendary Chiayi-born rock star Wu Bai, bringing local flavor to this grand national celebration. Andy Xue and Ryan Hill-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, we go to New Zealand, where a team of scientists are working on a special drink to help cows burp less. You'll never believe what they call it. Stay tuned.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please make sure to download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan's President Tsai has told a delegation of Canadian lawmakers the country is hoping for Ottawa's support to join a regional trade pact known as the CPTPP. Tsai met with the delegation on Tuesday at the presidential office in Taipei. The group is led by Liberal Party MP Judy Skro, who is the chair of the Canada-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Group and Standing Committee on International Trade. She signaled her support for Taiwan joining the trade bloc.
Taiwan, in my opinion, has demonstrated a very solid record on complying with the CPTPP. And we hope as a parliamentary friendship group, and I believe most of the parliamentarians in Canada hope that that accession to the CPTPP will happen sooner than later.
To find out more about the visiting delegation, our reporter Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick spoke with Canadian Member of Parliament John McKay, who has led several previous delegations to Taiwan.
I thought that Canada was unnecessarily hands-off with Taiwan, a little bit what I would describe as religious adherence to the one China policy, and I think almost failing to take note that it is a take-note policy, not a recognition of Taiwan's claim or China's claim to Taiwan, which I think is about as bogus a claim as there is. And the question really is that a useful ambiguity any longer? And if it is a useful ambiguity, the point is completely lost on me. When you're flying warplanes over an island and you're surrounding it with warships, the days of ambiguity are over. You are either on Taiwan's side or you're on China's side.
How do you envisage this relationship evolving in the future, or how would you like to see it evolve in the future?
I'd like to see Taiwan treated as you would treat any member of the family of nations. I'd just like to see its recognition at the UN and all the related bodies. I'd like to see a full trade agreement between Canada and Taiwan. The circumstances have become such that Canada's in a far better position to treat Taiwan as a full-fledged country.
Canada is sometimes criticized for lacking a coherent foreign policy when it comes to the Indo-Pacific. Do you think that that's changing?
I think to put it charitably, I think the policy is evolving. I think over the last 5 or 6 years, there was still a willingness to try to work with China, try to bring it into kind of a coherent respect for the rule of law and the various trade agreements and the WTO and all of the other conventions that have been post-World War II. That has proved to be illusory. So now countries are lining up in trading groups and security groups that best suit themselves. So, and I expect that there will be a further consolidation of those security and trade arrangements. So it's a strange process. It's incremental, but I think the positions are changing.
South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol says North Korea has nothing to gain from nuclear weapons after Pyongyang's latest missile test. North Korea's state news agency said on Monday that recent tests were designed to simulate a nuclear attack on its southern neighbor. It added that the tests were aimed at sending a strong message of deterrence after the U.S. and South Korea held another round of joint military exercises. The escalating rhetoric comes as a UN report warned that Pyongyang is in the final stages of preparations for a nuclear weapons test.
북핵 위협이 그날로 심각해지고 있습니다. 저는 누누이 강조했지만 굳건한 한미 동맹과 한미일 안보 협력을 바탕으로 아주 견고한 대응 체제를 구축해서 잘 대비하고 대응해 나가겠습니다.
The United Nations has voted to reject Russia's call for a secret ballot on whether to condemn its annexation of 4 regions in Ukraine. The General Assembly voted 107 votes to 13 in favor of holding a public vote later this week. Moscow had wanted the vote held secretly. It said that Western pressure meant it would be difficult for some countries to express their views publicly. Monday's vote came as Russia carried out its most widespread air attacks on Ukraine since the start of the war in February. The British ambassador to the UN called on members to support the draft resolution, which condemns what it calls Russia's attempted illegal annexation.
Putin is trying to take Ukraine's land, its resources, its identity. In doing so, he is overturning the most sacred principle in the international system, that borders cannot be drawn by force.
A powerful earthquake jolted people in many parts of Taiwan from their sleep early on Tuesday morning. The shallow magnitude 5.9 quake was centered around 59 kilometers off the coast of eastern Hualien County. Shaking was most intense in Hualien and Yilan, but many other areas, including the capital Taipei, also felt the effects. Taiwan sits near the junction of two tectonic plates, meaning earthquakes are common. The country's Central Weather Bureau says residents should be on the alert for aftershocks in the coming days. Taijiang National Park is stepping up work to protect a land crab species that calls its coastal wetlands home. The park in Taiwan's southwest has gathered a team of volunteers to watch over the animals, and it has even shut down park roads so the crabs can cross safely. John Van Trieste has more.
Under cover of darkness, a crab wades into the waves on Taiwan's southwest coast and releases its eggs into the sea. It's the tail end of mating season for this species, and Taijiang National Park, which lies on this stretch of coastline, is making sure the crabs are disturbed as little as possible. To get an idea of how many there are, these volunteers search the dark coastal wetlands, but after that, they make sure the crabs are left alone. At latest count, there are close to 4,000 crabs. And to help them move around more safely during mating season, the park called in academics.
在经过做出统计之后呢，到目前的资料为止，已经看出来说，环部的一个效果以及我们说的喷砂，这个效果是最好的。
For the first time, the park has also shut down some roads to protect crossing crabs from traffic. And there are suggestions to expand this protection.
也许可以拉满月的前5天、后5天，从傍晚天黑前5点，那一直到晚上大概9点或10点左右，这个机车变道先把它封路，那不影响白天跟10点夜间大家的需求。
The crab's guardians hope their work now will set the stage for an even safer mating season for the creatures next year. Asnaya Zhou and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
New Zealand's government has proposed a tax on greenhouse gases from farm animals as part of a plan to tackle climate change. One way of lessening emissions is to change the animals' diets, and scientists are developing a new drink they hope will help. It's known as kombucha. Jaime Okan has this story.
Small one somewhere. These dairy cows in New Zealand are getting an early taste of kombucha, a new product created by a team of scientists to help the environment.
So kombucha is a natural potential probiotic methane busting solution to reducing methane emissions on farm in New Zealand and potentially globally. So the way that we came up with it is that we've got one of the world's largest dairy culture collections. We've got over 40,000 strains here. And we'd been using that collection to look at probiotics for human health applications.
Cows and other livestock are some of the biggest producers of methane gas in the world. It comes from when the animals burp or pass gas. According to a UN report, methane is 80 times more potent at warming the earth than carbon dioxide. Scientists say that initial trial runs of kombucha, which is a mix of regular dairy milk and a probiotic, show promise in reducing the amount of methane produced.
The true eureka moment for me was when we got the results of the first cattle trial back, and we were able to show that we got a reduction in methane of up to 20% in those animals. And we've continued to be able to show reduction in those, and we've got other trials underway, but that definitely was the eureka moment.
New Zealand's government recently proposed taxing greenhouse gases that come from farm animals. This would be the first tax of its kind and is known by locals as the burp tax. It could come into effect as soon as 2025. The government says that farmers would be able to make back that money by charging higher prices or reducing the size of their herds. But economists say that that could put pressure on farmers.
So at the moment, the easiest way to reduce emissions is to reduce production or have less animals, basically. So that's a real challenge when we're trying to also, produce enough, continue to produce food and keep our export returns at the level that we want them to.
Countries like New Zealand have been pushing more environmentally friendly policies to help achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The scientists behind kombucha believe that their new drink will help reach that goal and put less strain on New Zealand's farmers.
New Zealand has key targets it needs to meet by 2030 and also by 2050. And this is a great solution that would be easy for farmers to adopt and help us meet some of those key targets.
With current trials showing success, cows across New Zealand could start drinking kombucha by the end of 2024. Not only helping to protect farmers' bottom line, but also the environment. Ricky and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with images of the opening stage of Rebel Rally. It's the first all-women's off-road navigation rally in the United States. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.